So if you'll join me in the sign of our faith, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same call to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us, for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. Holy Spirit. Before we get to the approval of the agenda, I just want to go and talk for a minute about item 7. I know that we had a little bit of emails going back and forth with respect to the spec ed plan and how we wanted to address that tonight, given that obviously there's a lot on this agenda and we don't want to rush any of the discussion around distance learning. I know that that is obviously extremely important right now, and we are in a great position to have all of our board staff here online that are able to answer some questions. And so what I'm wondering is that we do have the ability to add that extra meeting in. We had May 11th and the 25th, I think it was. We had place marks in both of those days, one to be a regular SEAC meeting, and one was going to be for the parent evening, which is obviously not happening now. And so I don't know how the SEAC members would feel about us maybe dedicating the May 11th meeting, that whole meeting to the spec ed plan review. So what we could do is we could start the meeting at 6:30, go until 9:30. It gives us a full 3 hours, and we could just do the spec ed plan. It gives a couple more weeks to review that, and then we don't have to worry about doing that tonight, and we can just spend as much time as we need in the time we have allocated to go over the presentations. So I'm happy if people want to unmute and discuss, or if you want to put a note in the I just want to make sure, I want to make sure everybody's okay with it. Yeah, so if you want to put a thumbs up in the chat, and if you have a challenge with it, certainly feel free to put on your microphone and let us know, or put a comment in the chat if there's an issue with that. Okay. I'll take your thumbs up there, Maria, as a thumbs up. But if you look just above, there is an icon there to put a thumbs up. And also, Camilo said that there's probably a good chance that we may as well be able to have staff come back again for that May 11th meeting and be a part of that review for the spec ed plan. So that's great as well. So if we're good with that, then I will make an amendment to the agenda, and we will leave off the spec ed plan review for tonight, and we'll do that on the 11th. So with that, could I get an approval of the agenda as amended? And if you want to put your microphone on to move a motion or second a motion, please go ahead and do that. Okay, Nancy, moved by Nancy, seconded by
Marvin.
Marvin?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any questions? Okay, perfect. Okay, we are now going to, we're going to move to our presentations. The only thing I would ask is there will be plenty of time for questions, but if we can maybe hold the questions until the end. And again, we do have a system in place here that we should hopefully be able to get to everybody in the queue. But if you can wait to hold the questions until after, I think that way it'll be a better chance that we won't miss somebody, as opposed to trying to do them as people are presenting. So we are going to do our presentation on special education distance learning update. The order of the presenters will be Wendy Reed Purcell, who is our spec ed coordinator and special education consultant, Patricia Codner, our chief social worker, Oliver Froese, Chief of Psychological Services, Glenda Brown, Chief of Mental Health Programming, Denise Colley, Chief of Speech Language Pathology, and Andrea Jones and Simone Terami, perfect, managers of the educational assistants. So,
question from Maria Lorraine.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Maria. You have a question?
She said after all the presentations.
That's okay. Nancy answered it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I said after the entire.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So I will hand it over to our team to go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay, Brenda, thank you so much. I think the consultants are up first, and as I said to them today, I'm really just the conductor of the orchestra, and they play all the instruments. So actually they're going to present, and we've got a group ready to go. So I will just pass it over to, I believe, Ashley Fliss, who's going to get started.
Perfect. Thank you, Wendy. Good evening, everyone. With the permission of this student's parents, I wanted to share with you this picture of a student who receives alternative programming at school and who successfully continues his alternative programming at home during distance learning. On a weekly basis and through the teamwork of both the classroom teacher and the special education resource teacher, different suggestions and expectations are provided to the student with regards to daily living and life skill tasks. Frequent pictures are sent to the teacher that illustrate this student's ability to initiate, engage, and complete these life skill tasks. We love seeing and sharing these personal accomplishments and good news stories.
Hi everyone, Jen Thompson here. We just wanted to share with you some of the resources that we have put out. So we started out in phase 1. So this was the very beginning of Learn at Home, and our itinerant and our consultant teams worked together to develop the Learn at Home website to support families in phase 1 of learning. So this was prior to our teacher-directed learning, but we wanted to make sure that we still had some supports out there for families. It has links to a variety of our board platforms, such as our D2L, our Office 365. It also has some instructional information on how to download and utilize some of these things. This includes our assistive technology like Read and Write. And it also has a link to a variety of resources for parents. And we categorized all of these and we broke them into different groups so that parents were able to access things in the areas that they were looking for. When we moved into the next phase, which was our teacher-directed phase, many of our teachers and our special education resource teachers moved to utilizing D2L as one of our classroom platforms, as well as Teams. And so our team has worked to support them, and we've put together a repertoire of 1-minute D2L support videos that are specific to special education. So they talk about things like using D2L with privacy in mind, or creating assignments for very specific students so that those assignments only go to those students. We also created a lot of support documents for our staff. So support documents on using BoardMaker Online, on the utilization of Teams, a flow chart that helps them access technical support, and some further documentation around D2L. And what this has done is we've actually seen a huge uptake in the usage of many of these things. So just one really great example is our certs and our EAs, through the support of our itinerant EAs, have increased the use of BoardMaker Online in our board from about 450 to 800 sessions is about where we were sitting for January, February, and March. And in April, we've just hit 5,714 sessions. So we've done a huge uptake of using BoardMaker Online to support some of our students who may have alternative learning needs, or other things that the teacher is able to direct, but the CERT is able to support with. We have also set up about 25 to 30 D2L shelves for our special education teams at the school. And we've also looked at our Lexia and Empower. So Lexia has become available to all students in our board. It went from limited licenses to schools who had them to now having full access board-wide to Lexia as a resource. And SEAC Kids has custom designed some review and practice activities to strengthen student skills. And these activities are provided by the CERT to students who were in the Empower program prior to March break. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to talk about the last 2 points.
Thanks, Jen. I'm going to fade out in a moment. I just wanted to say hello to everybody and good evening. So I'm going to speak about our alternative programming and things that we've been working on. So at the onset of the announcement of the school closure, we have been and continue to work on creating and posting alternative learning resources on our MS Teams A4 site. So prior to COVID, we had existing digital resources there in our 4 areas of curriculum. That would be literacy, numeracy, social skills, and daily living skills. And these were activities that we worked in conjunction with LearnStyle to create, and that was over a 1.5 year period, and there are activities focusing on Boardmaker Online and Clicker 6. With the switch from face-to-face learning to the digital world, we had to redesign some of these activities we had, and we created a supplementary resource folder that we added to our A14 site. And some particular supports that we added included social stories, dealing with hand washing, social distancing, what is COVID, why we can't have visitors at our home, some sample daily schedules, some household activities and tasks, community resources for parents, some programming templates, in addition to websites and apps. And all of these items are hopefully helping to create value-added experiences for our students.
Okay, so we have had to redesign a lot of the processes that we've had as a board in order to meet the needs of our special education students during distance learning. One of the things that we're really proud of is our SIA AT and mobility equipment was made available to all students who needed it in their homes. And we have a picture here. We actually received a number of pictures. We did get permission to share this one. So our students have been able to access the equipment that they use day to day. So this is our friend Callum, and he was able to use his adaptive bike. We have other videos of students using their bikes and just how happy and excited they are to have this equipment. So our principals, our CERTs, our team put together a process, and principals continue to meet requests of parents even as they trickle in after the fact, and we will continue to support in any way that we can to make sure that the equipment that they had at the school is available to them now. One of our schools even used a cab service to be able to deliver a piece of equipment that a parent was unable to get home. So we're very happy to say that all of our students have what it is they need for distance learning. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jody.
Hi, everyone. Like Lisa, I'm going to fade out here, but I just wanted to say good evening. So I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about some of the other processes that we've had to redesign over this time. As you know, IEPs were sent home at the beginning of term 2, so they have been updated prior to March break, but it is a working document. So as changes are made, such as an IPRC that may occur, and there's an update to the identification or placement, we will be updating those IEPs, the CERTs, in collaboration with the teachers, and parents obviously will create and update those IEPs. So we created a process to securely share the IEPs with parents electronically, and that's been sent out and shared with our CERTs. All CERTs have been in communication with parents with regards to the IEP and supporting students learning at home during this time. And that communications look different from school to school depending on what the parents need and what works for them. For some CERTs, they have made phone calls, they have sent emails. It just depends on what the needs of the parents and students are to touch base about how they can support their child during this time. The CERTs are working with teachers around the accommodations and modifications on the IEP as appropriate. As Jen mentioned, they have their own D2L sites, a number of them. I think about nearly half of our CERTs have created their own D2L sites where they can create small groups or provide resource time for students to touch base. And in nearly all cases, our CERTs are also part of the teachers' D2L sites so that they are there to be able to support the students' learning there as well. If a student has an alt goal on their IEP, or they are a withdraw student, CERTs are continuing to support that as well. So depending on if it's a daily living goal, they're looking at program and planning for that student. It might be a goal around the gifted identification. They might be doing math contests or passion projects. So it's really still meeting those IEP goals for those students that are on withdraw as well. Something that I think is kind of exciting here is the teachers' access to IEPs. So for high school, our teachers have always had access to IEPs so that they have the electronic version. In elementary school, that has been a bit of a different process, and we've provided hard copies through our CERTs. So with Jen and Anita and working with eLight, we've been able to provide access to eLight to be able to download and view a student's IEP while we're during this distant learning time. And that will be able to continue on in future years to have that access. So teachers will have access to their own students' IEPs electronically via eLight. CERTs have been supporting teachers on how to use this and how to access that. For IPRCs, we were waiting for some ministry direction on that, but they have indicated that we will continue hosting IPRCs. So we will do that virtually, and we've created a process for that, which will be coming out in the next few days around how to host the IPRC virtually, making sure the invitation goes out, how that's going to be, how we will record the statement of decision. And all of that information has been created, and we will be sharing that shortly with our CERTs. As far as receiving external reports, another change in our process. So we have looked at how we receive reports, whether they are in hard copy or electronic. We have a process for that, and CERTs they've received some information on our hard copy, and they will be receiving information how to get the electronic copy from parents very shortly. We also attach to that is consent to exchange personal student information. So we know that with their new kiddos coming in, we're going to need to be able to talk to those agencies that are involved, maybe the daycare setting, and we need to have that consent to share that information. So we have created a process around that as well, working with our privacy officer. So CERTs have that information in a fillable form to be able to record that information. With regards to the completion of independence rubrics, for all of our students in our board, we have completed them. Some of them, most of them were done prior to this, but we have had to continue them virtually as well for all our students. And we will be continuing that for all our new students entering as well. If they require some level of support, we will be completing our independence rubrics virtually with our school team. And that will be ongoing over the next several weeks. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa just to talk about the last piece, the development of alternative programming.
Yes, so thanks, Jody. So just one other item to add. So we've also developed an alternative programming template, and the purpose of the template was to align particular or specific IEP expectations in one or more of the 4 areas of alternative curriculum with household activities. So things that kids could do at home. So for example, if an IEP expectation was counting to 20, then there could be something that the CERT would suggest for a daily household activity that parents could do at home, collecting household items and placing them in a bin. And the CERT could support this along with the school team with activities like sending electronic visuals, providing parents with a script of verbal prompts that might be helpful to complete the activity, or also video model of the process. The template also includes a section for parent communication and additional digital resources that might support the selected expectations. The workload and intensity for each of our students is individualized, and it is supported by the CERT and parent and the ongoing communication. Our end hope is to raise our kids up so that they can achieve their IEP goals. And I think next I'm tag teaming with Jen.
Hi, sorry, it's me again. I just wanted to update you on we've had a lot of professional development going on. So a lot of this D2L, the platforms, Office 365, delivering online content to students who are at home is very new to a lot of our staff. So we have been providing weekly training sessions on the use of both D2L and all of the Office 365 applications with a lot of focus on using Teams in order to support distance learning. Those have been very well attended. We've had some very specific sessions. I did a D2L session specifically for itinerant educational assistants so that they can go ahead and support their educational assistants. We've had CERTs attending, department heads. We've had both elementary and secondary attending as well. And we've also even had some of our chiefs attending our sessions. So we will continue to support our staff in their professional development around distance learning in any way that we can. And when we have these training sessions, we are also taking information or questions that might be specific to special education and making sure that we post resources to help support everybody out in the system who may have those same types of questions. And now I'm going to tag back to Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Jen. And just to add that Jen's training sessions have had a domino effect out there in the system. So some of our iCerts and CERTs have also, once they've attended her sessions, been needing tech training sessions for their schools as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about our D2L A4 platform that I'm really excited that we have rolled that out to the system, and we have begun with some professional development with our specific group of sets. So we met at our first community learning session with our sets, the life skills teachers, our iCerts, and our consultants. And we focused on a few content areas of this new resource, notably classroom resources. It also served as an opportunity for sharing current distance learning practices with our sets and CERTs, and recognizing that there is a differential of expertise out there and experience. We wanted to showcase 3 alternate methods. So we had our CLC, our Catholic Learning class, share his D2L platform, and he focused his messages on recorded messages, so the calendars, presentations, songs, reading of stories. We also had 2 of our structured teaching teachers talk about MS Teams, and they focused on the chat and the feedback feature and how there was interaction between the students and teachers. And we also had some life skill sets that spoke about email, using email, phone calls, pictures, so something less techy, and prepared packages, for example, which all were able to innovatively engage their students. We have had quite a bit of focus on technology training, it seems like, but we have had other PD opportunities. I'm just going to mention one other, just in the interest of time. We had offered back in March when we all began this, Sonderly training founded by the Geneva Center for Autism. And that's an educational training for anyone that's interested to learn more about autism. Some of the topics could include or have included ABA, reinforcement, and prompting and behavior. And then we'll turn over to our next. Jody?
Hi, Lisa. Thanks so much. It's Ashley.
Sorry, Ashley.
So with regards to ongoing virtual meetings, it's sort of similar to how meetings occurred prior to distance learning. The special education department has kept consistency in who they meet with, focusing on the content and delivery of ongoing important information. All meetings from leadership to individual schools are held virtually via Microsoft Teams and are scheduled on a consistent weekly basis. And it really is truly amazing that after 6 weeks of not seeing each other in person, you can see all of the ways in which we stay connected and how our work interconnects and how we work together for the needs of our students. I'll pass it on to the next slide.
Hi there, it's Jody again. So just on that, this continuation of how special education runs. So we are looking to run our open houses for our gifted, essential skills, structured teaching, and CLC classes. We are working with our certs, the consultants and the certs of those schools that have those classes to find dates that we can hold these virtual open houses and invite parents to those. As soon as we have those dates secured with the certs, they'll reach out to parents and let them know. And we're excited to be able to continue with those. And the sets are working on their PowerPoints to be able to share as best as we can what the culture and community of those classes are like and how we can welcome the students there. And finally, our next process is the transitioning of our new students. So again, consultants are working with schools to identify any new students that are coming to us for September. This might be new JK students. It also might be students from other school boards that will be with us. So these transition visits, it would be typically during this time that we would be going to preschool visits, the consultants, iCerts, and certs going to preschool visits to see these little guys and find out what their needs are. We've had to switch a little bit here, and we can't do that, unfortunately, but we will be holding our visits virtually, and they will look a little bit more like case conferences. There'll be a lot of people there, so it won't just be the CERT, iCert, and consultant meeting with parents. We're going to have the schools, principals, any support staff, and outside agencies that the families involved with have been invited. We will also have our own staff there. In all cases, we will also have a second meeting at the school level to work to support the transition of the student closer to the time. And our SEAC consultant, Jen, will be invited to that. If the SLP hasn't been at the first meeting and their speech needs, then they will be at the second meeting. So we're really looking to find out, the first meeting is really to look at to see what those needs are as it relates to the independence rubric. And from there, we will continue to support the transition with further meetings at the school level in June. So I think that is it from us. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say hi, and then I'll take off my picture now and just go into the slide. So school social work since after March break, just to help you with the understanding of the phase work that we've been doing. When we return to after March break, social workers have been reaching out to the high-risk cases on their caseloads via telephone or email to check in and see how things were going. And by the second week, they were starting to reach out to the majority of the families. It took about 2 weeks in to have the majority of families starting to respond to them. But in general, they are now able to provide service in terms of virtual counseling after they had their training last week comprehensively on the 9th of April. To facilitate the work that they're doing, there's many things that needed to be created, and we started with our newly created referral forms that administrators could obtain verbal consent from parents or caregivers to access social work, and that has started to work already. Some schools have utilized it already. We have also created the informed consent, which the social workers are using to share with parents about the risks and benefits of using the virtual platform. And along with that, accompanying that is the practice guideline created out of our all the chiefs working closely with our privacy officer to secure the platform, which we're working on, which is Teams, but also the guiding principles that staff needs to work with in terms of working within their scope of practice in accordance to Halton Catholic District School Board's expectations. And then to support the work that they're doing, additional forms had to be created. And we start with our duty to report, which is often a big area for us, unfortunately, that in this time we know too that The propensity for increased conflict in the home is higher now. And so we have a newly revised duty to report fillable form that does not require signature. It will just have the information as to who is making the call, the time the call's made, and the date. And then that is password protected and sent to, if it's the principal doing it, then it goes right to the SO and the SO to myself. But if it's the teacher, it's from teacher to the principal to the SO and to myself for data collection. We also have worked quickly with our collaborative external partners to create online forms as well, fillable forms that referrals can be made to them in a safe manner via the social workers to provide the Tier 3+ work that they have been providing. And so we were fortunate that we're able to do that. In terms of Tier 3+ support as well in the community, CAPAS continues to admit students for inpatient, and our REACH program, which is a transition from the inpatient to outpatient, continues to provide services to students. In terms of the external agencies that have revised their processes to work with us, it's our Lynn Man Nurses and our Master's Trained Social Worker counselors at Nelson Youth Center and Woodview, where we have our school-based support program. They have all adapted fillable forms that we're able to utilize. And as you see, and you might have seen this already, the COVID-19 hierarchy of needs, it's one of the things that our social workers have to work with some of our families to try and help them remember what is the priorities right now. Yes, school is vitally important, but we have to also assess and determine the readiness of their child to move out of the place of anxiety or anxious or worrisome concerns they have to get them into a place of learning. So there's a lot of coaching and modeling for some of the parents we're working with to help them understand that when the child is feeling less distress, they're going to be better at being able to utilize the information shared through the D2L platform and so forth. Ironically, many of our students who had high anxiety and suffering from depression, in some cases are actually doing better at home right now because the pressure is off without having to attend school or to produce work. And so talking to those parents about having routines, giving them options of things that they can do throughout the day so that when they're able, they can again entertain the idea of learning in terms of what their needs are and where they are academically. And so basically from the school social workers themselves as well, they've been working very briskly to produce various videos to support families, recognizing the differential type of learning that some parents may have too. Some are very, they respond better to videos in their own time. They can listen to it and re-listen to it, also for students, but really just making a menu of resources and tips that families can use and trying to cover a large basis so that we have something for everyone. We also have individual one-pagers with tip sheets that we're producing as well, because some people like to have access to that. And we're trying to, again, look at all the things that would be of importance during this pandemic. We have a lot of things around the basic needs like shelter, food, housing, clothing, just basic necessities that some of our families are struggling with accessing. And so those resources have been categorized by areas in the region for easy access and what's available in their community. I just need to see okay. And then of course we have also started to deliver virtual training, and we're hoping to take that out into virtual training for parents in terms of parenting. So we're going to put something together. We're tackling that, but we've just conducted our first virtual training today to 45 secretaries with regards to attendance and what that means in the broad sense. If a child isn't at school, it's a major impact in every area of their lives. Even though they are coding, trying to give them the background about why accurate coding is important, but also being the face of the school as a secretary when a child comes in, or a parent or an external person. Their welcoming of anyone coming in is very important to keeping our students engaged, families engaged, and so forth. So that was really, while it was nerve-wracking for me in the first 10 minutes, because I've never done one of those, I was able to get through it. And so far, I'm hearing that it was well received. So that has given me a little bit more positive energy to move forward with the next one. So that's the highlights. I hope you did get a chance to read over the summary that was provided, and I guess if you have questions, you can address those later.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me. My name is Oliver Füse. I'm Chief of Psychological Services, for those who may not know me. I'm going to speak to two groups and what we've been doing. The first group is the psychology staff at the board. And I've divided into phases in terms of what we have been doing and what we're currently what is currently underway in terms of initiatives, and then upcoming phases. So for psychology, when we encountered the start of the pandemic, we were just coming out of the gifted screenings in February and had just geared up again to do our main tasks, which are psychological, psychoeducational assessments. And so when we were able to, we were completing those outstanding or ongoing assessments. I should note that we have been using online methods of assessment for our indirect measures in terms of attention questionnaires, social emotional and executive functioning and adaptive functioning questionnaires, and for I would say a couple of years now. And that has helped us because it means that we were not depending on sending back and forth questionnaires, for example. So we were able to continue that part of the work and finalize reports of assessments as much as we had the information and the assessments were not right in progress, particularly the direct testing of the students, which we obviously couldn't continue. So we've done that. And besides that, we've also participated, like other groups, in the development of some e-learning modules for educational assistance. And then we joined social workers, Patricia's group, and the CYCs, and for training in tele-practice for psychology and other mental health professionals. And we also, like Patricia's and Glenda's and Denise's group, worked all together with our privacy officer to make sure that we have all the procedures and documentation in place so that we can work safely and responsibly, and also have can provide good information to parents about how this work is changing in terms of the modality going through the virtual connection. So now, as we've gone through this phase, we're in the process of providing feedbacks to parents about assessments that had been going on through the Microsoft Teams platform, or per telephone as required. We have some parents who feel more comfortable to just receive the information via telephone, but a lot of parents choose to go with the Microsoft Teams platform, and that enables us to, for example, do things that we would do in a one-on-one personal meeting with the parent, where we can use the sharing function of the Teams platform to show graphs and show visuals that explain the results of the testing and the strengths and needs of the students. And that has been so far, we've had positive feedbacks from parents, and that's an ongoing activity that we're doing in these weeks. We're also started to provide then, as a second step, virtual feedbacks to school teams, the CERTs, classroom teachers, and administrators about these assessment results. And so we can engage in program planning based on our psychological assessment results, as well as move towards identification. We're in the process of solving some technical issues so that we can safely transmit our reports to the schools and parents, so that there's no risk involved in terms of handling of mail and contact. And so that's going to be coming out this next week, that we have established these electronic ways of communicating our information safely and securely to parents and schools. The third phase is going to be resuming our review of external psychological, medical, and diagnostic reports, which we have only done a little bit in terms of those reports that we've already had in our possession. So we were able to consult to schools about these external reports and in terms of identification for upcoming IPRCs. And we are now have developed procedures with our privacy officer to be able to safely transport and review and consult about this information to our schools. We're also in the process now to review in what way we can resume assessments. Obviously, there are some limitations in terms of validity and reliability, and the effect that the pandemic has on us all and our children. So we have to proceed very cautiously, but we are actively exploring what we can do in that regard. We are also getting ready to join or help out our social workers in terms of any mental health support interventions that we can provide to students, starting with students where our psychological assessments have indicated some mental health needs that can then lead into virtual support for students. So the other group is the behavior analysts, and our behavior analysts have been very active at the beginning, particularly in developing and sharing educational materials and supporting our teams, as they've always done in terms of behavior analysis and behavioral supports for students. And now as we're realizing that this is going to be a longer time period, we decided to move into virtual support for students, and we are starting to actively get involved in the consultation for those students that were on a caseload prior to the closure, and we're using Microsoft Teams as other colleagues as well. And we are providing guidance on appropriate tier 1 and 2 strategies that will transfer back to the school setting. And those must be based on the current needs of the student and family to ensure the success at home. So for example, those might be strategies like environmental setup, prompting, opportunities for choice and practice, visual supports, and how to support the parents and guardians in using those strategies. Other behavior management strategies or activities to support goals that the students have in terms of virtual learning, as well as planning for the transition back to the classroom. So as I said, the behavior analysts also have developed a lot of resources for the CERTs and I teams to share with the parent and guardians based on the feedback and their need. And as well, provided accommodations and resources to support alternative curriculum goals that might affect daily living skills, reinforcement systems, and other behavioral goals that are captured in the IEP and can be used with the thinking again, what can generalize to the school environment when the student returns. So I just put in some examples that our behavior analysts developed just so that we can kind of illustrate what that may look like. The parent may report that the child will not sit at the table, so we can provide some strategies and explain and help with setting up those strategies. Or that my child won't complete the work, then we can talk about the implementation of a first then board, a visual schedule, reinforcement, prompting, and other techniques. And there's two more examples. So there's a lot of different techniques and strategies that we can provide to parents, and those are all things that we can then use to build it into the transition back into school and connect it to the ongoing goals.
Good evening, everyone. It's Glenda Brown. I just wanted to say a quick hello before I phase out.
Hi, Glenda, are you muted?
Oh, yes, I think I was. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble.
Let's start again.
Okay,
Thank
great. Okay, I will. So I just wanted to say that it is a pleasure to be joining everyone this evening and appreciate this opportunity to share what the CYC department is doing and also share some updates from School Mental Health Ontario. As others have mentioned, we've had to reimagine and revise all of our processes to reflect our new virtual world, along with the other three disciplines, ensuring that we work closely with our privacy officer to ensure that we're working safely and supportively. So as you can see from the supplemental document that I shared this evening, that the CYC department has taken a phased approach. As part of this phased approach, we've also had to ensure that we keep an open mind. This is a new world to all of us in terms of how we provide our CYC practice. And so that, taking the approach that we have to be very flexible and know that we will have to revise and adapt things as we move along in this process, especially as we learn new things. The CYC department, they took the approach where they were reaching out they were responding to students and parents who were reaching out to them, the administrators and through teachers. They were also providing a lot of support for teachers in terms of their adjusting to distance learning. The CYCs in that first few weeks were providing a lot of no-name consultations to staff and really kind of supporting the new processes. As this week, we have been moving into a phase 2 of our of our service delivery model. We've really been focusing on establishing for CYCs, providing that building capacity, helping them feel comfortable in terms of their competency and confidence and working safely in the new virtual telepractice. Really focusing on learning, especially how to engage with some of the younger children and youth in the especially in the video process. It's a different world, connecting with children, youth, and families in the video experience. We are also recognizing that virtual work does take a little bit longer to establish those relationships and to be patient. CYCs tend to be doers and want to, be responding and providing as much support as they can. So just recognizing what the things that they need to do to put in, to recognize that they need a little bit more time to make those connections with the children and the youth and with parents as well. CYCs also for the last 5 weeks have been really focusing on developing, very much like the social work department, but providing and developing, creating resources and tip sheets for teachers, for parents, for the system, just around, especially around a lot of the tiered 1 programming that CYCs provide in support of teachers. Some of the programs being like Mind Up, Roots of Empathy, Zones of Regulation. So a lot of those programs, the CYCs have been really working hard to develop those materials and those support resources for the virtual world. Some of the things that they've created have been fantastic and will really help parents be able to continue the work that teachers have been doing and CYCs have been doing throughout the year, especially in those programs. So they are continuing on with those tier 1 programs to support that work. CYCs have also been developing and providing PD for the EAs on mentally healthy classrooms, and also developing other professional development for other staff departments in the system. So now, as we move into phase 2 of CYC support, CYCs are now that we have been received the training for our telepractice. Our phase 2 has started this week, where CYCs are now reaching out to students and parents on their caseload with whom they have consent, and making those connections and doing those check-ins. For the CYCs that have been doing those check-ins with students and families, it's been very well received. I think that hearing a familiar voice on the other end of the phone has been very comforting for a lot of the families, especially those who may feel somewhat isolated or somewhat unprepared for what it's like to be doing distance learning, supporting their children in distance learning. So I think that the feedback from the CYCs who have started that phase 2 work has been very, very positive. Phase 3 work for CYC work will really be contingent upon, we'll be accepting new referrals on a case-by-case basis, really depending on the needs that are emerging. It's hard to tell right now in terms of what those needs may look like as we extend the school closure, but we will be absolutely responding to students and families who require that support, depending on what those needs look like. I'd also just like to update you from School Mental Health Ontario, from the mental health lens. Oliver and Patricia spoke very well about how we are all working together to support the needs of our students with mental health. School Mental Health has really been working very diligently over the last 5 to 6 weeks, creating resources specifically for COVID-19. Their website is very helpful and has resources for students, parents, educators, leaders within the school boards, and they are very helpful. Those development of resources is an ongoing basis. And we have been sharing those on the board website. Social workers and CYCs have been developing a lot of the tips based on the evidence-based information and resources from School of Mental Health Ontario. So we've been sharing those. I can ensure that you receive that link to School Mental Health Ontario. Next week is Mental Health Week. And so all of the disciplines from the support services have been working on revising and looking at what we will be focusing on for Mental Health Week next week, just recognizing that there's been a shift in our society in terms of the pandemic. So just to ensure that we're meeting the needs and providing resources and tips that are very relevant for our current situation. Lastly, I just wanted to share that School Mental Health Ontario, what we are doing right now is starting those conversations around what school will look like for students and families when we do transition back to school. So we are just beginning at the beginning phase of talking about that transition, supporting teachers, families, and students when they do return to school. I know that we as a system are also starting those conversations as well, just because it is a new world, and we do need to look at and anticipate what those needs may be. So thank you. I look forward to any questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Denise Colley. I'm the Chief Speech Language Pathologist, and I also coordinate services for students who are deaf and hard of hearing or blind low vision. So I'll be speaking to those different areas. I'm going to highlight some information about the current phase that we're in, but refer you to a package that Andrea would have sent out in addition that has some more details about our earlier phases. As you've heard, the clinical chiefs were meeting as early as March break to discuss contingency plans and how clinical services could be delivered during school closures. I'm really pleased to say that in a very short period of time, the SLPs and CDAs have adapted their tiered intervention supports to a telepractice format, which includes emails, telephone conversations, and virtual face-to-face over the Teams platform. I cannot emphasize enough the volume of work and energy that staff have poured into making this transition successful and creating really as much of a seamless shift to a telepractice without disrupting service to students as I think is humanly possible. I'm enormously proud of the work that the team has done in terms of adapting consents, guidelines, creating interactive activities for a virtual environment, adapting their programs that they were doing in classrooms to a virtual setting, and supporting alternative goals to a home environment. We are currently in phase 3, and those are the supports that you'll see on your screen now, where we're continuing to provide support to teachers. SLPs and CDAs continue to also provide direct support, either face-to-face or over the phone, whatever the preference is, to parents and students in terms of meeting their goals. These can include sessions to support language-specific goals, Story Champ programming sessions, sessions to support the social thinking, social skills program that SLPs were running, sessions to support the use of Pictello to bridge oral language to literacy, and also support of augmentative communication systems at home. And many of our students that have SIA devices for AAC were able to get those from the school and bring them home. We're also in the process of contacting, so all of those students were prioritized by the school staff, and now we're in the process of contacting all of the other students who are active on SLP caseload to review the supports that are available to them. We've started to do speech screenings as of this week from the wait list and are making referrals to school-based rehab services. And beyond May 4th, we're looking at supporting preschool transitions and certainly exploring ways to get reports to schools, as most of the SLPs have done their feedback sessions virtually as well. I just want to sort of talk about some of the lessons that we've remembered as we've gone to virtual work. The first is that, you know, we're very grateful for the tiered model that Halton Catholic has embraced in the past few years, and on many fronts it is business as usual. Virtual takes more time, so we are working with families to reduce goals and establish routines within online sessions to support everybody's comfort. We always recognize the need to customize supports, but now more than ever to the strengths and needs of the student and the family at any moment in time. So we have some families that have the best of intentions to meet with us online, and then things change and they're not able to. So we are really supporting parents in opting in and out as they are able, and our door is always open. We're finding that as staff are vulnerable in trying new things, it's allowing parents to be vulnerable and to ask more questions and to reach out to us directly, which has been wonderful. And most importantly, we're finding that connecting with parents and students is good for staff well-being. I think we think often how it's good for parents and students, but it's good for staff too. And some of the feedback I've gotten from a CDA was, she said, it's so great to be able to connect with parents and have back and forth communication. I'm receiving a lot of positive feedback from parents, tears, kissing, hugging their child during the session to show how proud they are and saying they never knew what their child was capable of. And from an SLP, she said, I did my first session. It was a gong show. I loved it. He kept running to his room to get stuff to show me. No one could stop him. I miss kids. So much fun. Moving on to our deaf and hard of hearing, blind, low vision services, they were instrumental in providing some specific resources to the Learn at Home site that HCDSB has that are specific to students with hearing impairment or vision needs. All of the families on their caseloads have been contacted and were contacted early on, and they've identified their priorities for direct support in collaboration with both school teams and family readiness and needs. We are providing brailing support to students who use Braille and are couriering materials to support lessons in Braille to students as needed. And the DHH team is spending a tremendous amount of time supporting families online virtually with helping them access technology so that their children can also access distance learning. And they're also working to begin planning Dress Loud Day and how we're going to be able to host that as a system virtually moving into May.
Good evening, this is Simone, one of the managers of educational assistance. So Andrea Jones and myself worked with our school teams, and we had site-specific meetings with all of the educational assistants. Out of those meetings, we generated, they generated and we helped put together a document in 3 different areas: student engagement, material prep, and professional development. And this document was shared with CERTs in the system, as well as educational assistants. It's really good for them to see all of their ideas come to fruition and see how creative they could be. So in the area of student engagement, we are happy to report that there's a lot of different things going on out there in the system, really exciting things, and we're getting good feedback. A lot of live streaming, virtual classrooms, and many schools are doing pre-recorded videos, stories, and check-ins with students. Of the schools that we spoke to, 14 have begun their live streaming sessions, and we're using the Microsoft Teams platform or the D2L classrooms. There is some additional training going on for the itinerant educational assistants so that they're able to support their teams with the D2L platform. In addition to that, we do have quite a few more schools that are starting up within, actually some starting this week and some starting next week as well with the live streaming. We had 30 schools reply that EAs are supporting virtual classrooms, and this is being done in collaboration with the classroom teacher. We've had really positive feedback in this area from the families, and the students felt that they really needed to be connected with that staff, as well as staff are reporting how connected they're feeling now that they're able to see and support students in this manner. We had 27 school EA teams that have already started, and there will be more that have pre-recorded messages in the form of stories, instructional videos. We've had one educational assistant with create a story, including video of her chicken coop, how the chickens live, the laying of the eggs, the whole story, and share this with the students, and the students are really enjoying this. Some of these videos are shared through Teams and some are shared through the D2L platforms. And we do have several other schools across the system that are starting this activity. What we're finding is that as schools share, sometimes ideas are catching on and other schools are reaping the benefits of those ideas also. So in the area of material prep, we have both elementary and secondary schools preparing materials for students. Most of this, as Jen mentioned earlier, has been through the use of Boardmaker Online. There's been a huge spike in the use of Boardmaker Online, and most of that is attributed to our itinerant EAs as well as our EAs in the system. Some of these materials that they're preparing are literacy and numeracy based activities. Some are interactive activities, many personal hygiene activities, visual schedules to support the families at home, daily living, so that the students are able to continue with the daily living portion of their schedule, and social stories also. In the area of professional development, we are very lucky to have had many of our different educational partners provide PD for our EAs. The area of preference assessment kits, which is something that's relative to the students that they do support, our behavior analyst team was able to share this presentation as well as some guiding questions for them, as well as one on the power of choice. We had our psych department share some really great information, 3 different modules on ADHD in the classroom, as well as anxiety in the classroom. Our speech department shared some PD for us, people games to promote interactive learning, as well as the developmental language disorder. We've had some really positive feedback on all of these so far. We also introduced the part 1 of 3 of a presentation prepared by our itinerant child and youth counselor team on mentally healthy classrooms. Also, I've had good feedback on that, and folks are really looking forward to part 2 and part 3 that are to come. So as far as our itinerant educational assistants, they have been supporting their school-based teams in quite a few different ways. They have provided capacity building with regards to technology. This technology is very new for many of our educational assistants, and just like our students, they're all at different parts of their journey of learning. So our IEAs have been really helpful in helping to move them along. In the form of the D2L, IEAs have received 1 session of training with Jen Thompson. We have another session booked to build their own capacity and make themselves familiar with this platform so that they are able to provide support to teams in their own schools. And in addition to that, they have been attending both school team meetings and staff meetings within their own families of schools. In addition to that, they attend itinerant meetings with their own specific team, and they meet with Andrea and I for itinerant EA meetings. They have been providing support, a great deal of support for Boardmaker Online. I know the numbers here are not quite accurate because there's been a lot more that's happened since we put this together, but at the very minimum, it was 111 individual sessions that the IEAs have provided, as well as 70 group training sessions. Moving forward, we do plan to continue supporting distant learning with all of these different initiatives and hope to add a few more. Our PD development is going to continue. We still have modules coming in from our different education partners, and we are very appreciative for that, as well as Andrea and I do continue our own commitments with working with the human resources, as well as continuing through our staffing process with our consultant team. Thank you. And if there are any questions, we will answer those after. Thank you.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much. That was amazing. A ton of information and very much appreciated. I want to go ahead and open it up to questions if everybody is okay with that. I'm sure we have a lot of them. You presented a lot of information. It's clear that a lot of work has been done and a lot of thought has gone into how we're going to support our students in spec ed through this distance learning. But I'm happy to open this up for questions if people want to start putting their hand up in the chat. Let's go ahead and do that. Hey, Dan, so you can just type in hand up.
Is that working?
Yeah, okay, so go ahead, Dan.
All right, so that was a lot of information, and I guess everybody's really under pressure right now, especially in special education. And a couple of things from the presentation, I think it was mentioning that about sharing strategies and reinforcement tactics with parents. And there was also I guess some ABA training for the staff. I was wondering if it's possible to share that presentation or ABA details with parents that are now in a position to do the one-on-one full day, I guess, learning tasks with their kids. So that will definitely help them the same way it helps, I guess, the staff in the classroom. And the other question had to do with the online sessions. So it was mentioning online sessions, but how are those, like, who's initiating this? Is it the parents? Is it the teacher? How would they happen? I guess, is it possible to use the Brightspace for that? There was some D2L training. Is it possible to use Brightspace in special education to basically get some tasks and get some, I guess, communication between the educators and the kids? Thank you.
So I guess we've got two questions then. We've got the one around
That's
the BA
right. There are two questions, yes.
Yeah, so I think Oliver is going to answer the question about the BA supports, and then we can toss a coin on who wants to answer the question with respect to the, yeah.
So I don't know, can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, hi. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question correctly, but I think the important thing is we're starting from a point of providing services for those students that our behavior analysts have already been involved in. So that there's already a communication in place with the school team and the parent, the communication would happen through the school team with the itinerants and the certs and connecting to the BAs, and then the platform generally that we're using is Microsoft Teams. That is the one platform. I mean, we obviously have the other ones too, but that's the platform that we know is safe and secure. so that's probably what we would do in terms of the visual. It depends also on the preference of the parent in terms of what kind of support they want, particularly if we want to demonstrate things. I don't know if that's answers your question.
Yeah, more largely, like if there was no ABA team, I guess, that was involved before we got to the online learning. I guess all the special education students would have, and the staff would have some ABA training and strategies in the class. And given that there was, I guess it was mentioned that there was an ABA presentation to the staff that just happened last week, maybe that can be shared, and or maybe some strategies can be shared by the actual teacher or the staff.
Yes, definitely. I'm not sure with the specific presentation that happened. They did a lot of presentations and training. The ABA for All has been a big part of their role over the last couple of years, and so they have not just one presentation. They have really a plethora of materials and presentations and supports that they can provide throughout the system, which they have done, and they certainly can continue that. And the connection through the different schools, the certs and the itinerants would allow to continue that. There's definitely, that has been one of the main roles in the system is educate parents about ABA strategies. The one caveat that I would have is one thing that ethically we can't do is we can't go virtually into a home and do like a functional analysis or an assessment in the home, because our mandate is to support the student as it relates to transitioning back in school, because we can't, there's things that we can't control in the home environment, and there's certain things that we can't do.
Yeah, that's great. No, I was just talking about sharing some of the presentational strategies. Yeah,
definitely that we're looking forward to continue that work.
Yeah, thank you.
Dan, do you want to reiterate your second question that you had?
That was about the online sessions. It was mentioned that there are online sessions ongoing.
Yes.
Personally, I haven't seen one, just from my own experience. So the question was, how do the parents have to initiate those? Is it the teacher? How are these going? So is it like the Bright Space can be used to kind of monitor or give some tasks for the kids, or monitor the kids, or even a face-to-face reading a story, or how is that envisioned to happen?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, Jen Thompson said she can answer it.
Okay, yes, okay.
Oliver's like, yep.
Hi, Dan. I'm doing a lot of the D2L training. My partner Jason is doing a lot of the Teams training. So I think your question is around classroom teachers delivering different types of training to students at home. So that will vary from teacher to teacher based on their comfort level, their needs, the needs of the students. So some teachers are using D2L, which you've referred to as Bright Space. Bright Space is actually the same as D2L. And so some teachers are using it in the sense, some are posting video messages. Some teachers are providing specific assignments to students, but they're not doing live streaming. It's the same thing with Teams. So some are setting up a Teams, like a classroom type environment where they're providing lessons, possibly video lessons, it could be links, it could be activities. So it varies from teacher to teacher and even student to student within a classroom, depending on the teacher, the communication they've had with the parents, and the student needs as well. So you may not see the exact same thing happening from classroom to classroom, because we are leaving it open to them to support the students in the way that they're most comfortable and that they're able to do, you know, the best job of. But we are, you know, they are communicating with them just in a variety of different ways. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's, I guess, shed some lights on it. Thank you.
Okay.
Did she answer the question?
Yeah. Okay, Dan, are you good with that?
Yep.
Okay.
I guess it's we'll have to also discuss the teacher and everybody. Well, I guess there should be a bit more communication between parents and teachers, I guess, at this time.
Okay, Andrea Ricci, I have you up next.
Hello. So I guess my question is, maybe, is it Simone who was speaking about BoardMaker?
Yes, it is.
So I had a question around that. So for the BoardMaker tool, is that something that parents would be able to get access to as well?
If you have a child that has a BoardMaker online account, the CERT would contact you so that you would know that there are activities in your child's account for the child to use during the day.
Okay.
So yes, they would have access, and there were instructions shared for families who have students that, or children, I should say, using BoardMaker online.
Okay. And is there just, it seems like there are a number of things that could be addressed through BoardMaker. Is there an opportunity for there to be like a library that has examples for literacy, numeracy, that would explain common concepts that parents could access online?
In order for parents to access them, there would be the ones that would be dropped into their specific child's account. I'm going to ask Jen to answer any more on that because she does have a little bit more information that she can add.
Yeah, so if you go to BoardMaker Online's website, actually, Andrea, there is a lot of free resources for parents at the moment. So they actually have opened up a lot of their mini units for parents to be able to access for free, and they are accessible through printable PDFs. So even if students don't have an active BoardMaker online account, because that's not something that they were using as part of their programming, our relationship with BoardMaker is a really good one, and so they have opened it up to everybody, and you do not need a login to access or require those materials.
Okay, good. Thank you.
No problem.
So Jen, I've just added in the chat the BoardMaker to go as well with the pre-made activities. That's something that parents can access as well.
Perfect. Those are actually the exact ones I was talking about, Lisa. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Andrea, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next is Marika.
Okay.
Me? Seem to be having problems with my microphone. Yeah, she's having problems with the microphone.
Marika, do you want to type the question maybe in the chat?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you a bit better.
A bit better, or do you want me to type it in the chat?
Oh, you're hearing, no, you're coming through now, I think. Can everybody hear?
I'm having a problem. Whenever I press my button to talk, it's playing workout music, and I have no idea why. And I don't even have workout music, so it's perplexing to me for a lot of reasons.
Okay, we can hear you okay.
My question is for Simone. Just looking at, what I was curious about the live streaming for the, talking about the 14 schools with the educational assistants who are able to live stream with the students. And I'm just wondering, how is this determined? Is this initiated by the schools? Is this directed by the board? I'm just, looking at continuity and just, hoping that all students can connect with the EAs. And I'm just wondering how we are going to go about that.
So this is something that is directed by the school based on the needs of the school. They're also looking at where the educational assistants are as far as their learning, because these are new platforms for the educational assistants. So there's a number of different pieces to this. So I'm not sure if I'm completely answering your question, but that is why some schools may be a little bit further along than other schools.
Yeah, so are you hoping that most students are going to be able to connect with their EAs? Because I think it would be, I know one of my friends, their child's able to connect with their EA. My child's not been able to connect with their EA. So I'm just looking at it from a continuity sort of point of view. Is that something that needs to be addressed with the school itself?
I'm going to just ask Andrea because she's joined us as well. So she is going to add a little bit more as well. But yes, we would be connecting with the school teams, and the CERT team as well as the administration team will be directing the teams, but we do hope that they will be able to connect with their students. Okay. And Andrea is going to add a little bit more to that.
Thanks, Simone. Just further to that though, what we would want to do is that the options of connecting and engagement, the options are the same for every school, but it's up to the leadership team within that building, being the administrators and the teaching staff, to determine whether or not any of those particular options are appropriate for the particular profile of the student they have and the team that they have working with them. So which would be no different than when we're in the buildings. So we're kind of mirroring very similar kinds of input and resources to when we are in our buildings. So what we may direct outside of an EA manager office or as a spec ed initiative for teams to use with particular children, we're just creating that pool of resources, and then any specific strategy is still dependent on the leadership team of the building to determine if that's appropriate for their team and the profile of the student, etc. So I just want to, so it is an option for everybody, but it may or may not be appropriate depending on the specifics of one particular profile or one particular team dynamics or something like that. So I just want to, you would go back to the school as Simone has said, but I just wanted to give some context around when we're talking about consistency. It's the options of the strategy that has a consistent nature to it, but the implementation is dependent on the profile needs of that particular student and the team itself in the building. I hope that provides some more information.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, we good for the next question? I've got Jessica Lim up next.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you, the Special Education Department. You definitely have been working so hard to putting all these things together for our staff and students, obviously. Just piggybacking on the options of support in terms of streaming or virtual platform or pre-recorded. I think it was Jody earlier who had mentioned that half of CERTs have created their own D2L classes to group students to support. But I'm just wondering, because it is, again, mentioned by Andrea just earlier, that the leadership decides what platform or what modes work the best for the needs of the students within that school. How would you implement the IEPs, especially for the students who are resource support or withdrawal support, and the other students who actually need accommodations such as scaffolding and prompting? Like without virtual streaming, I don't think anyone can really make that kind of supports. So is it really up to the parent to advocate, saying my child needs to continue to have those kind of needs? How are we going to make sure that these needs are met according to their IEPs?
I can try and answer that for you, Jessica.
Thank you.
It's Karen. So we have really worked hard with our CERTs to have them understand that they need to keep up with the placement of their IPRC. And so they have come about it a few ways. So some CERTs have decided to join into the teachers' D2L. So it's just because they don't have their own shell doesn't mean that they're not part of a D2L. So I would say the majority of my CERTs in Milton anyway have either created their own shell or are joining with the teachers. So they connect with the teacher when the teacher's teaching, and they either push out material specific to their students on their caseload because they can individually send out material, or they can individually chat with the person as well. So some CERTs set up times that they're available between, for example, 9 and 11, where the students can reach out for them in virtual time, like real time. Some do it through email. So each CERT works out how they're best going to deliver the different placement options. For placement 3, some of my gifted CERTs are working on them online with math contests. They're sending out enrichment either through the teacher or through their D2L shell to make sure that the students are feeling enriched in their different subject areas. So there's a wide range of ways that CERTs are reaching out to their students in keeping with the placement options of their IPRC. I'm not sure if that helps, but it's not always live, but some do live, some do video, some do online. So they're doing a variety of ways, but it's not always the same for every school and every CERT.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Karen. Yes, I understand that some CERTs are definitely doing what is most efficient for the student, but I'm more concerned about students who actually have accommodations such as prompting, scaffolding, or ADHD students, the students who just really can't work independently. I don't think chatting in a virtual classroom will be the most ideal accommodation for them. And I do understand that not all modes of delivery is to the teacher's comfort levels, but I'm just wondering, like, I think Marika, was it, that asked earlier, making it equitable continuity for all their students to have their needs met. Thank you, Karen.
Well, I think one of the other equity issues is ensuring that all kids have access to the lesson provided by the teacher, which is one of the reasons they have not always in live time, because not every student can either has access to the laptop at that time or their AT. And so when you have them being able to access it, then all kids can access the lesson. So by having it in virtual or real time has benefits, but it also has deficits. So the teacher has to weigh A, their comfort level, and B, what is going to be most appropriate for the kids in their classroom. That's then the CERT's job to check in with the student to find out, or the parent, where are they struggling, what is the pressure points, and how the CERT can best help them access that curriculum so that they can complete the task.
Jessica, does that answer your question, or do you need more clarity on that?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Karen. Maria, I've got you up next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I had a few questions, and I'll just ask them one at a time if that's okay. And I don't think there's anyone behind me right now in the queue, so hopefully that's not a problem. One thing that caught my attention, it was mentioned that the IEPs are accessible to the high school teachers, like I guess electronically. And I'm just wondering, so is that the case as well for students that are in a regular classroom? Because there could be like 8 different teachers. Do they all have access to the IEP? Because I just thought that seem like a lot of hands in there, but it's just curious about that.
Hi, Maria. Okay. Oh, there. Hi. Oh, Anita was going to say, Anita, I'm on now, so please jump in if I am missing something. But yes, the teachers, if they have a student in their class in high school with an IEP, then they do have access to read only to those students in their class.
Okay, so it's read only. They can't actually update.
That's correct.
Okay, I thought it was that they had access to update, so that makes more sense.
Yeah, no, that's correct. It's read only.
Okay. Okay, so my second question was about the gifted screening, and I know Oliver did say that before this all happened that they had, I think, completed the screening process. So I just want to clarify that that means the second stage was completed with the full WISC for the students that made it onto the second stage. And then along with that, it was mentioned that there was virtual open houses were going to be offered. So will those be offered to all the newly identified gifted students, or just those who indicate an interest in the self-contained classes? And how will the information about the different placement options be kind of presented to parents in that in this new era that we find ourselves in?
Claudia, you want to take that? Or Oliver's taking it?
Yes,
oh, a bunch of people.
I'll just answer the first part. Yes, it is correct. We completed 120 gifted screenings. Stage 2.
Thank you.
Well, Claudia, do you want me to speak, or are you going to speak on the open house?
We can both speak. We're both on at the same time. Hi, everyone.
Okay, go ahead then.
So as far as the process goes for the gifted open houses, Maria, we have our CERTs connect with all the parents that received the information that their son or daughter was newly gifted, and have the CERT go over the different options that are available with the parent and talk about that student's specific profile. So not everyone is invited to the open house. It's the students that the school, in conjunction with the parent and a meeting with the parent, thinks that that would be the best option for that student, because not every student would do well, you know, in the, for instance, gifted class. Not every student would do well with an option 3 placement. Some students don't want to be pulled out of class at this point if they're in an older grade and attention drawn. Some students want the CERT coming into the class to work with them. Some students don't want any attention drawn on to them at all and just want the CERT working with the classroom teacher behind the scenes. So that's the process that happens there. We trust on the CERT in conjunction with that area consultant to hold those meetings and discuss the best option for their students.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do appreciate that those self-contained classes aren't the best option for everyone. I just was wondering how they were going to learn about the different options. So you've answered that, so thank you.
No problem.
So Maria, we are also going to be having a virtual open house. We've been working through all of the open houses that we have to get through. So we have structured teaching, which we've started to organize, the essential skills, and the gifted as well. So probably by the end of May, parents will be invited to attend a virtual open house for the gifted, where the gifted teachers will present a PowerPoint just on the different highlights of the gifted placements in the gifted classroom. So that information will be sent out to parents probably within the next couple weeks.
Okay, great. So my last question is about transitions, and we heard about some plans for transition planning for students that are new to the board. But obviously we always have children, you know, changing grades is a transition, changing from elementary to secondary is a big transition, and changing placement options is a big transition, including changing from a self-contained to a regular class or vice versa. So I was just wondering, and I think we had a transition presentation on our list of presentations that we're waiting for. I'm just wondering how this current situation impacts all of those different transition processes. And, you know, some children will be going through all 3, right? Changing grades, going into secondary and changing their placement. So.
Wendy, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sorry, Brenda. I was just waiting to see if it was okay.
That's okay. Of course it is.
Okay, that was a great question, Maria, because I think it impacts every sort of student. So just to give you a bit of an overall, what we're doing right now, the consultants, the itinerant certs and I, and the department heads, because we meet every week and we're sort of planning things in time when we need them. We've had so many things to work out as it relates to just getting launched with online learning and redefining all of our processes. So what we're doing is sort of going in turn. The kids we're focusing on just this moment in time are all those little ones that would normally be, we would be going out to daycares and homes to see. So that's the transition phase we're in. We're going to have meetings for those kids, as you heard, instead of observing them. Then we'll have second meetings to build their transition. But when we get to the point in the year, which is more May-ish and June, certainly, we'll certainly be advising schools. We push out, oh my gosh, probably at least a half a dozen major communication pieces a week around what we want them to pay attention to right now and things we want them to do, next steps to take. But we are behind the scenes working on these things. I'll give you an example. Our behavior analysts have come up with some really awesome infographics to support the transition of students, not just with autism, but any students who may have behavioral concerns, and we're sort of prompting staff to consider all the good practice around transition. In other words, you don't have to wait for a BA or your consultant to do this kind of work, but we'll be pushing out transition information as the weeks go by so that our certs and department heads know to pay attention to certain things around transition. We're just not quite there yet in terms of the phase that we're in with regards to supporting schools to manage transition. We're more focused right now just on those new kids coming from other boards, and also, oh gosh, it just jumped out of my head, I'm sorry. Some of the other things you've heard about tonight with regards to the variety of students we're managing right now, but we will absolutely get to general transitions, Maria, as it relates to kids moving to new grades, moving from elementary to secondary, etc. Hopefully that gives you an idea.
Yes, thank you. And I do appreciate that there's been a lot of things to figure out in the last little while. So I hear you.
Thanks.
Is there any more questions? Are we good? I can take a couple of seconds here for if anybody else wants to put a hand up and ask a question while we have everybody here. Or if anybody needs further clarification. Very informative, thank you. Thanks, Tammy. Okay. Going once, going twice. If so, we will move on to item 3 on the agenda, and I can let our staff go and relax for the rest of the night. Oh, yeah, Andrea, go ahead. Andrea, can you hear us? You're muted. I don't know if you wanted to tell us what your request was.
Everybody else is muted.
Yep.
For me.
Okay, go ahead.
Brenda, if you can hear me, can you wave?
Yeah, I can totally hear you. Yep, go ahead.
I can't hear anybody else right now, but I
think we're all muted. That's probably why.
Hold on a second.
But go ahead. We can hear you.
I'll just make my point. Okay. This has been really actually a fantastic presentation. I appreciate everybody taking the time to do this. As a parent of a child in the system, I would just encourage that that the CERTs do take the time to connect with the students. I know they've reached out to us, but that face-to-face connection is really worthwhile for the parents and for the students. So even if it's at a check-in to say, you know what, if you have any questions, if you need anything, we're here for you, and kind of setting up that face-to-face time, having that consistency across the schools, I think would be very valuable. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, we're going to move on then. So, so thank you so much to staff for that presentation. Excellent job, and thank you to everybody for the questions. And certainly, if there ends up being, you all have access to that presentation. If something pops into your head that you didn't think to ask at the time or weren't sure of, please feel free to reach out and ask that question, and we'll make sure to try to get a response for you. So thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and continue on. Thanks, guys. Stay safe. Okay, so we have got item 3 is the approval of the minutes from our February 24th meeting. I'm wondering if everybody's had a chance to take a look at those minutes and if there's any questions, concerns, comments, deletions, additions. Okay, if not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Marvin?
Thank you, Marvin. And seconded? All right, Tammy, second. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 4, any declarations of conflict of interest? No? Okay, we're good. All right, business arising. Andrea Hughes, do you mind pulling up our business arising on the screen? Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah, I'm not the only one. Yeah, my little itty, my old eyes. Okay, so I'm seeing communication plan. I think that's a continuously ongoing item. Kudos to Andrea Ricci for the amazing job she is doing with our Twitter. I cannot take any credit for that. She's doing amazing with that. So thank you for that. And I think we're just continuing on with our communications. Obviously, our parent information night, we'll have to talk about what we want to do with that. I'm really proud of some of the communication initiatives that we've started this year with SEAC. And so hopefully we'll be able to continue those and add on to that as we go. The other item that I saw here was Maxi. So sorry, go ahead. Was it? Okay, sorry. Okay, Maxi letter. So Maria Lorenko and I were working on that together, and Maria graciously offered to assist with that. So she has provided that now. We'll take a look at that. We're just trying to decide how relevant that is at that point. But Maria and I will go back and I'll connect with her. So thank you, Maria, for doing that. I know you sent through the email, and I'll get back to you and we can talk about that and then perhaps send it out for thoughts to the rest of SEAC, if that makes sense.
Yes,
okay,
that
perfect.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for doing that work on that. And then Camilla, do you have updates?
Thank you, Brenda. So regarding the two pieces with my name on Business Arising, I'll start with the second one first, just to make it simple. The information around the yellow bench at Corpus Christi, Andrea Hughes will email you all this evening the website regarding that information. If any school would like more information, how to contact the director of that organization, how to get a yellow bench for your school. So Andrew will send that out. And then the second piece was, if you recall from our February meeting, we shared our IEP data with SEAC, and there was a question that came from the floor regarding the high number of no exceptionality data. And I didn't have a fulsome answer at the time. I spoke to Wendy as well as Anita Bader, who were overseeing the transition from the IEP, our old IEP engine to our new one. And Wendy has a more some clarity around that question. Wendy?
Yeah, thanks, Camilo. So there are a number of reasons for non-identified IEPs that are probably not overly apparent.
Muted,
One of
Wendy.
them. Oh, I'm muted? Am I okay now, Camilo? Hello?
Still can't hear you, Wendy.
That's funny because I'm off of mute.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Oh, Tammy says she can hear me and Maria can. Okay, I'm going to carry on. There are a number of reasons why many of our students are on a non-identified IEP, and I'll go through them. One reason is some students have equipment only. It could be AT, it could be other equipment pieces, and they don't have any other accommodation needs or modifications or alternative programming. Sometimes students don't meet criteria for any exceptionality. There's only 5 categories that the ministry gives us for an exceptionality and identification. Those are communication, physical, intellectual, to include everything from gifted to mild intellectual disabilities to developmental disabilities, and behavior and multiple. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes little people come in and we don't assess little people on their intelligence until they're quite a bit older, because we want to give them a chance to grow and change. So even a student, let's say with Down syndrome, we wouldn't have an exceptionality for them. They don't fit into those until we measure their intellect, unless they also had some physical issues, as an example. So many little people are on non-identified IEPs until we have more information about their intellect. I think those are the main reasons another exceptionality group might be fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So those are students who in the early days may have a lot of support that needs to be articulated in an IEP, accommodations, maybe even some programming modifications, things like that, but they don't, again, we don't know for sure that they have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. It's actually very hard to get that diagnosis. It can take a while, and those students we identify in a physical category because we know that it's brain damage. So there are many students who we put on non-identified IEPs to make sure we're adequately supporting them and claiming it, if you will, articulating those accommodations, those equipment pieces if needed, and making sure all adults working with that student have that IEP so they know what to do to support the student, but they just might not meet criteria for an identification in the early days, or even for some kids it could be ongoing, but we still want to articulate that help. Mental health as well, we might capture that way. I hope that helps. If there are any other questions, please don't hesitate to type them in the meeting chat and I'll answer them for you.
Thanks so much, Wendy. We've got a question from Maria, maybe before we go to the second point. Maria, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure, thank you. I was just wondering, does that group also include students who are maybe waiting to be assessed, because we know there is a wait time there? That's one question. And then the other question is, and not maybe anytime soon, but would it be possible at some point to get a further breakdown of that no exceptionality category, so that we kind of know, where they fit in based on some of what you've described?
So I'll answer your first question first. Okay, Maria? Can you repeat it? I know you can tell my mind is a little bit fried these days. So just repeat your first question. I definitely know an answer to your second question.
I did say yes while I was muted, but yeah. So now I have to remember what it was. Sorry. So my first question, I think, was whether some of those students are on the wait list that are part of the no exceptionality data. If some of them waiting to be assessed, sorry. Yes.
They could be, Maria. They absolutely could be, and we might have established an IEP while we're waiting because we recognize that a student might have needs, especially accommodations, and we don't wait to give those ever. We don't need an assessment to give kids what they need. Assessments give us lots of other information and may even clarify what it is they need, but we can do a pretty good job of figuring that out while we wait. So with accommodations, though, we don't put every student who needs accommodations on an IEP, only if they are very, very unique to a student. Some of our blind, low vision students need very specific accommodations that have to be articulated because ideally teachers do a good job of accommodating students because anyone could be accommodated. But when they're very specific to the student or they're needed in quite an intense and frequent way, that needs to be captured as well. So just wanting to comment on that, that would be the time we would establish an IEP just for accommodations, not in every single case. But yes, Maria, if we're waiting for a student who might be en route to an assessment, we may establish a non-identified IEP. That's a really good question. And with regards to your second question, we can probably get that. I can't promise you it'll be within the next couple of weeks or anything, because I know our team is doing so many things right now, but Anita and Jen, who manage our IEP engine, could take some time to deaggregate, if you will, what's in that it's easy to get the identified information and break that down now. We've really improved that with our new engine. With non-identified, we'd have to almost maybe get that from the consultants the more I hear myself talk, because there wouldn't be anything in particular about those IEPs that Jen and Anita could easily determine why they're on one. Do you know what I mean? We'd have to get that from someone who really knows the student.
Yes, and I totally appreciate that that's not a priority. I was just thinking about something, when things are back to normal. Okay. Whatever that's going to look like. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a note of it, and it would be, as I said, I think it would have to be the consultants who give us that data roughly. We could give you information around who's accommodated, who is it just equipment, not who, but numbers, numbers of possible students maybe with FASD, or I wouldn't break it down that discreetly. Maybe just students we suspect meet criteria but haven't been either diagnosed yet or haven't been to an IPRC yet, that kind of thing. Well, you can think about the categories, but it will take a bit of time. So I'll make a note.
Great, thank you.
Is that, do you have any follow-up, Maria, or is that good?
No, that's great, thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, I've got a hand up from Tammy. Tammy, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, thank you. So I understand that you've explained why that we have a high number, but if we're taking a look at the 2016-17 data, then the 2017-18, and compare it to what we currently have, for the elementary, we went up 257 as far as our reporting goes. So we were at 235, went to 388, then we went to 645.
I can speak to that too, Tammy. Okay. That is purely a function of how poor our former IEP engine was and how it didn't talk to Trillium. I know it's really confusing, but I can start at the end and go back a tiny bit just to give you an idea of how difficult it was to get accurate data, which was a big part of the reason we moved to the new engine. Was when we migrated over, we gave our certs very strict instructions what to do to make sure all the placements and identifications were accurate. And even still, after we did that, we had over 3,000 errors in a variety of ways because our engine did not speak to Trillium. So what happened is when the student would be identified and placed, it was the CERT's job, or the department head along with the school secretary, who was the only one who had access to Trillium, our regular staff do not, would have to sit together, and the CERT would say, okay, we identified Tammy. her placement has changed now. She used to be this, but now she's this, because we review a lot as well. So sometimes identifications and placements can change. And so we would be sitting with the secretary, and for some reason, there were a lot of issues with those two platforms not communicating. So our data was really inaccurate, and we know that now. And now what you're seeing is really perfectly accurate data. And so it looks like it's much greater in terms of the number we actually have now of non-identified. The truth is probably closer to the fact that our data was just not accurate before. I know that's disappointing to hear, but at least we can confidently say it's good now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Thanks everybody for the questions. There was one more point in Business Arising, I think, or did we get to both of them? You answered we got to both, we're good? Okay, perfect. Let me put my camera on. Not that you guys need to see my mug, but with my Longhorn shirt, I know. Okay, we are going to get to item 6, which is our Special Education Board Policy Review. And so we had commented in previous meetings that we would bring forward policies anytime that we felt, or not felt, but anytime that there was an impact possibly from a spec ed perspective. And so we have this one here, which is the psychological assessment of individual students. And that's going to be presented at the policy meeting on May 12th. So we have it here for an opportunity for our SEAC members to comment, weigh in. Andrea's put it up on the screen, so thank you for that. We can certainly take any comments now and record them, but you also have a little bit of time if you haven't had a chance to review it and you want to send some comments in by email. But was there any questions on this policy that we could answer right now, or any comments that we could add from a SEAC perspective? Yeah, Maria, go ahead.
Hi there. Okay, so I had a couple of questions. Under principles, there is some new wording in red, and I just wanted to confirm if that's replacing the wording above it, because that's not struck out, but it does seem to be redundant. So that's one question. And then okay, so the policy talks about qualifications of those conducting the assessment, but that's not talked about again in the policy. And also talks about monitoring and management of appropriate wait time management. But again, so that's within the purpose, but then it's not touched upon again in the policy.
Okay.
So those are sort of 3 different, I guess,
okay.
questions. Sorry.
That's okay. Do you want to do, Maria, just for because I know these are the team meetings are a little bit hard to follow along. Do you want to ask your first one again? And Camilo said he can answer as best as he can for those.
Sure. Yeah, that might be easier. So,
okay.
Yeah, so the first one was just under principles. There's some writing in red, which seems to be redundant of the paragraph above. So I just want to confirm that paragraph above is being struck out. There's just no lines through it, which there usually is.
Andrea, can you just move that document down a little bit so we can just see what Maria is referencing, if that's okay? Up, down, whatever that, I never know the right. Is that there under purpose, Maria?
Under principles.
Oh, principles, I see it there. Okay,
yeah.
Yep.
See that? Yeah. So I think.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
So, so the piece of the redundancy comes from it was actually my suggestion to rewrite the paragraph because it was all in passive voice. And I felt it was a little bit awkward. And so my suggestion was to replace this shall be given and so on to reword it in a way that it's active. So you are correct that this is redundant. So the red would replace the black basically.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but just normally it's struck.
Yeah, that's
so
it's a little bit weird how it shows there. The way that I had written was like in a comment kind of way. So
sure, okay. And then actually I'm going to go in a different order, but so also under purpose, we've added in, or staff have added in, and the monitoring and management of appropriate wait time management.
Yes.
Which I think is great, but there's nothing else to support that in the policy. So just wondered about that. And also, I know at our last meeting, our last SEAC meeting, we talked about having those wait times maybe come to SEAC a few times a year, just so that we could be aware. And I wonder if that could be something that could be added to the policy, that those wait times would be reported to SEAC and maybe to trustees as well, X number of times a year. That would be one kind of request or suggestion. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, or if anyone else has comments about that.
So maybe I can start by saying that it was also me to suggest that adding the monitoring and management of appropriate wait time management, I just put it only up there. So I guess it can be repeated somewhere in the principles. The reason why I wanted to add it was because it has been the focus of not only SEAC, but also a review of the Auditor General and other stakeholders. So I felt that was an important piece to add to the policy, because it hadn't been previously included. Obviously, like you say, it's something that maybe should be repeated in the body, not only in the purpose.
Well, and I'm thinking not just to repeat it, but to maybe elaborate as to how that is going to be managed, and maybe whether there's some reporting. Because again, like I said, we did talk at the last SEAC meeting about having that come a few times a year to SEAC. So if that could be part of the policy or the procedure.
I can speak to that, Maria. So we do have a plan in place, as was requested by SEAC, to bring periodically, and Oliver, correct me, we had mentioned, I think, 3 times a year to SEAC to bring our assessment data to SEAC, wait times, number on lists, number on wait lists, all that will come to SEAC. We did add the monitoring and management piece to the policy, recognizing that not just in our board, but provincially, there's been a strong movement towards in boards around psych ed assessments and ensuring that the wait times are reasonable in nature. Oliver mentions that we might be able to add something in the principle. Absolutely. I would suggest that something a little bit more specific might better fit in the procedure that is attached to this policy. That way, the procedures where you get a little bit more specific around the duties to live out the policy in the work of the staff. So again, with Oliver and with the policy committee, we can look at possibly if there's something that makes sense to fit in the procedure, where that kind of information is we reflect what we've what we're going to go forward with SEAC. Maybe it reflects and is codified in the procedure.
Thank you. And that sort of leads nicely into my third question, because when I first read the policy and it talked about the qualifications of those conducting the assessment, but again, there wasn't anything specific. I did print out the procedure. I didn't really have a chance to go through it in detail, but I kind of skimmed it and I realized that information I think is captured in the procedure. So I was just going to request that, I know when these policies go to the board that the accompanying procedures go as well, to the policy committee, the accompanying procedures go to the policy committee for review as well. So could those come to SEAC as well? And maybe between now and the next meeting, the procedure 6-89 could be shared as well with SEAC members for any feedback. And I think it's helpful not just for feedback into the policy review process, but even just so that SEAC members are aware of all these policies and procedures and what's in them, because there's lots of really good information that's maybe not captured in the same level of detail in the spec ed plan. So That was kind of my last point.
That's a fair comment, Maria, and yeah, something that we could definitely ensure happens going forward. Again, as you, I think, as you know, I think this was the addition of this agenda item as a standing item on our agenda is very new, and so it's kind of where as we see what works and what doesn't work, we can definitely adjust that to add the accompanying procedure the way it's reflected at policy meetings. Because as you mentioned, you know, a lot of times it's the procedure that gives you a little bit more context of what the policy is all about, and it really helps the reader understand the philosophy behind the policy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Maria, did you have any other questions?
No, I think that is it. I could think of more if you like.
Okay. So we have got, so Helena, I know you had your hand up, but I don't know if it was answered when we referenced which policy it was or which procedure it was, and that we can send that out. But if not, did you have a question that you wanted to follow up with?
No, that's fine, Brent. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Andrea Ricci, you had your hand up as well?
Yeah. So most of it was addressed through the conversation we just had with Maria about potentially adding some commentary under the principles for the monitoring and management of the wait time. And then in the procedural document, so that's all covered. The only additional piece I would add is when we do look at the special education plan in the psych ed assessment section, I suggest we also have something around monitoring and the monitoring and that aspect of the wait times, because there are wait times listed in the spec ed plan, which says 3 to 15 months. So in light of kind of the review and the policy, if we can just earmark that section for when we do discuss it to ensure that we address this there too.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to tie those two in for sure. So thank you for that. And like I said, if there's any comments, if you want to reiterate sort of some comments on this policy, and we will send out you can click to the accompanying procedure. If people need it sent out, let us know. But if not, you are able to click through to it. But if you're having trouble doing that, let us know. We can send you the procedure. But if people want to make comments and on the policy and procedure, please just send those over. I'd say try to do those as soon as possible, and then we can compile those and bring those forward to the policy committee on behalf of SEAC for some recommendations. So May 4th would be the date that I would need those by, just so that I can get those in. Okay, does that work? Is there anything else on this? I don't want to move on if we have any other questions on the policy piece. I think it's really important that SEAC have some weigh in on these, and so I don't want to rush it. Okay, good. Okay, so we discussed item 7. So in lieu of that, we are going to make the May 11th meeting dedicated to the spec ed plan review. Prior to that, we can send out again an overview of what we're going through, maybe some helpful hints on how to do that, but we can dedicate that entire time. And that gives us a little bit more time to do some pre-reading on that. So if we're all still in agreement, that's great. So we won't worry about item 7. Item 8, Camilo has no superintendent's report. A little bit. Oh, he said he can talk. He's happy to talk, so we can give him a little bit of time. So let's give Superintendent Cipriano a little bit of time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair.
Hold on, let me turn down my. Sorry.
So just a couple of things I wanted to update SEAC on. First of all, I do want to also publicly thank my team. I know that many of you have expressed in the chat site your thanks to the team. I can tell you that I've heard from many principals from around our board and some parents that have expressed the same thanks that we've really had to recreate almost every single process that we have in a virtual sense. I know that our director, Pat Daly, who is on the call here tonight, mentioned that at the provincial level, the Deputy Minister of Education has called this the greatest educational experiment in Ontario, and it really has. And from a special education perspective, we've really experienced that experimentation. And so just one, another process that we are looking at, and that we will have some more information for our teams. We are working on our virtual IPRC process, and so I'm not sure if it was touched on earlier, but we are, before we roll it out to the system, I will be sitting with in a virtual meeting tomorrow afternoon with all superintendents of special education from around the province in Catholic school boards. And we will be talking about the expectations around IPRCs in a virtual time. And so we will be looking at prioritization of IPRCs, from changing of placements to grade 8 to grade 9 transitions or new identifications. I'll share that with SEAC at a future date, what that looks like, because we really, as we learned last week, as these closures continue to May 31st, we really have to start the process of planning for next year. Speaking of next year, we completed all of our CERT transition or CERT movements and placements. Thankfully, at the elementary level, we did that all before the closure. We had all of our CERT placements and movements, and at the elementary school level, we did that right before March break, so we got that under the wire, not realizing at the time that date was going to be so important. And in the last week or so, we completed all of our secondary CERT movements. So we've been planning for next year at the staffing level for our schools. We're happy to announce also that we are planning, it's not official, but we're planning to add 4 secondary certs to our complement in secondary at some sites that probably will most definitely need that extra support. And also we are planning to add another alternative education class, a change class that was presented to the Board of Trustees last week. And we're excited that we'll be able to support our students with alternative needs at that level. And I think that's everything. And who cuts my hair? I cut my own hair, Jessica, on the weekend with some trimmers, just the side. The top is still growing out too much. And both my daughters have volunteered to cut the top of my hair, but I don't know if I trust them yet. So I'm willing to shear. If you have a dog that needs shearing, I could do that because I've done my sides.
Andrea, go ahead. You have a question. Oh, shoot. Hold on.
Just to clarify, so are all certs moving?
You hear it?
Sorry, I lost the volume. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Are all the certs moving, or only specific?
Oh, no. So every year, there are some movements based on requests from certs wanting to move for a different placement, a different experience, a different community. Some certs would like to move a little bit closer to home. Sometimes certs request to move from elementary to secondary or secondary to elementary. So I would say, off the top of my head, in elementary, we probably had, and maybe Andrea Hughes or Wendy, if you can help me with this number, I want to say anywhere between maybe 10 to 12 movements of elementary certs, and in secondary, there were much fewer movements, and I'll tell you why. Because of this COVID-19, we made a decision that we were not going to make any movements unless a retirement or a release that was approved prior to the closure. So we're trying not to make any moves during this time. So in secondary, the only changes really were the new positions that we're hoping are approved and we'll be adding for September.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And thank you, Jessica. It looks great. It looks like maybe I can get a job on the weekends cutting hair, maybe.
Yeah, any additional certs?
Any addition of certs? Can you clarify the question? How many? We're adding 4, if that's the question. Yes, in secondary. In elementary, we haven't added any yet. There might be oh, Pat Daly's got his hand up. I'll leave that to Pat then.
Thanks, Camilo, and hi everybody.
we are looking at some additional positions at both elementary and secondary. It's tied into our OECTA agreement, and we haven't completed our local bargaining yet, but we are hoping to add some additional staff.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay. Was there any other questions for Camilo? With his little sneaky superintendent's report. Okay, if not, we will move on to Trustee Dort for the trustee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to need some help from Superintendent Cipriano where my hair is concerned. I couldn't do anything about that, but shortly. Anyway, so here's my report. We had a last SEAC meeting on Feb 24th, quite some time back. At the the policy meeting of Feb 25th, we talked about policy II-41, which was the school uniform dress code and school dress code, which was discussed as an action item. And the policy committee recommended that the policy be forwarded to stakeholder feedback to be reviewed at the April 14th policy committee meeting. At the March 3rd board meeting, EA's survey results was presented. The purpose of the survey was to measure EA employee satisfaction and supports they receive in their role, to highlight the importance of the results were highlighted. Based on the results of the survey, professional development for the next 24 months was being planned. The results and the information collected was shared with all the EAs and with all the EA managers and special ed department. They were using this information to plan professional development opportunities and initiatives to build EA wellness in the workplace. A very good report presented, excellent job done with this report. We are caring for our EAs. At the March 31st board meeting, the board was updated by Director Daly on continuity of learning, distance instruction, support and assessment. As we all know, we are in uncharted territory, and this is an unprecedented situation we are in. And our senior staff is doing their best to work with our children and teachers in order to maintain this continuity of education. We have been talking about this all this time. We continue to improve and fine-tune our methods and strategies. As far as special ed and special needs programs, it's very challenging, but work is going on, work in progress. It's going on quite well. At the March 31st board meeting, the policy for school uniform and dress code was an action item. This policy was forwarded to stakeholders as discussed earlier, and we came back with consultation survey results, which was survey was from March 3rd to March 24th. Following stakeholder consultation, staff made further revisions, which included adding clarifications to the uniform bottoms and adding equity and inclusion considerations to the principles. This policy will come into effect on Jan 2021. The policy was approved by the Board of Trustees, and Trustee Guzok and Trustee Agnew did a lot of work on that, and they can throw some more light on this if required. The staff report on feasibility of expanded alt ed program was presented at the Feb 18th board meeting. This was presented by BR staff. And trustees were very impressed at the work being done and requested staff to examine the feasibility of expansion of the alt ed program to reflect current and future growth and needs. The report was presented, and what came out of that was the alt ed program is limited in the range of courses it can offer. And there is a need for a broader range of course options to be included, like tech, physical ed, phys ed, and co-op education. Presently, we have only 2 classes and 2 teachers for all grades requiring different supports. And this is a challenge right now. So only, as I said, only BR has this program. The conclusion was that we are not able to support the expansion of the program at this point in time. But staff, as mentioned in the past, they are looking at expanding this program. Once again, this is a wonderful program done in Bishop Redding in Milton. That's my report, Madam Chair. Questions?
Oh. Yep, go ahead, Maria.
Hi. Sorry, I think I have two questions. And thank you for reminding me, because you mentioned about the uniform policy.
Yes.
And I believe one of the other changes that was made to the uniform policy is that there would be 3 members of SEAC sitting on the RFP committee. So I'm just wondering how that's going to be, how those members are going to be chosen to represent SEAC.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll bounce the question to yourself, Madam Chair, and Trustee Guzzo, because they were more involved and deeply involved with this.
Yeah, I will. Yep, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, thank you. Maria,
Hold on,
so,
let me, sorry.
Good. Okay. Sorry about that. So the policy has passed at the board with the changes. However, the policy does not come into effect until January 2021. So the RFP process, whatever the changes were, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but my understanding is for the upcoming RFP process, for this one coming up, then the SEAC representation will be there.
Sorry, the SEAC representation will be there or will not be there?
So I think, so Maria, if I'm understanding it correctly, and so I think the question is how will those members be selected? I think was the question, right? If we have 3 from SEAC, how we're going to determine that?
That is the question. Yes.
Okay.
And but sorry, now Nancy has raised another question, because I'm a bit confused then whether that's going to be in effect for this upcoming RFP process.
Right. Do you want to answer that part before I answer the SEAC part? Yeah. You know what, Maria, I don't know. That's a great question.
If it passes,
yeah,
and passes through all 3, then it will.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want to answer that, Camilla, that part?
Then it would take effect. It
Yeah.
would take effect at the very next RFP.
Yeah.
Which is coming up.
It should take place at the next RFP. And so if that's the case, then we need to get on it with the SEAC members. So that's a timely question. So, you know, we didn't put anything formal in there, Maria, as far as how those are selected. This is just me sort of shooting fish in a barrel. You know, what we could do is similar to what we had done previously with representation for the ad hoc committee for French or for the Spirit of Inclusion Awards. What we could do is we could just open it up to any SEAC members that are interested in being on that committee. And then we could just choose, you know, do a lottery or do a draw from those people that are interested to make it as fair for everybody. I think that's how we've sort of done it in the past with respect to SEAC representation. I don't know, what are thoughts from everybody here?
That sounds fine to me. I just, I didn't see it on the agenda and I wasn't sure. I hadn't heard anything. I just, because I knew it had been changed in the policy, I was aware of it. So I just wanted to ask.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone else has any comments. And then, and I do have another question, but I'll just wait if anyone else wants to comment on that.
Okay.
So I'll go to my next question. Was
okay,
just
perfect.
a little bit confused about the alternative learning classes, because I thought I just heard Marvin say that it had been decided that we couldn't add another class, but I thought I heard at the board meeting that it was being added as a new budget initiative. I'm a little bit confused about that. And I also was wondering where those classes are found in our spec ed plan, because I don't remember reading about those in there. So I'm wondering if that's something that's missing.
I am under the impression it's not being added, but correct me if I'm wrong, because of the situation right now and the requirements for staff and extra courses. But Superintendent Cipriano is there. He may be able to throw some more light on that.
Yeah, I think we are adding it, but I'm going to let Superintendent Cipriano answer.
I may stand corrected. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the addition also relates to what Director Daly indicated maybe about 10 minutes ago, that part of the OECTA agreement from a local priority perspective, once the local agreement has been ratified, part of that agreement adds a certain number, can add a certain number of teaching staff to a board to support what the language is around special education, STEAM initiatives, science, technology, math initiatives, or unique learning needs, or to support students with mental health. And so we're hopeful that with an agreement in place that we can add one of those alternative education programs, change classes to a location that possibly maybe is underserved, or a location that has the capacity and the ability to house such a class. The question around the special education plan and where does it fall under, technically, those classes don't fall under special education. The reason I addressed them, the reason I brought it up here, and the reason that I've spoken to it at a board meeting, we do support those classes through the mental health component. We typically have one of our mental health workers or two of them supporting a location, a social worker and CYC. So we support it from that perspective. The actual class teacher falls under the portfolio of student success. So the superintendent Colin McGillicuddy would technically supervise those teachers under his portfolio under Thomas Merton as the school. And as many of you know, Thomas Merton is located in Oakville, but also has some satellite sites in Milton as well. And we've used that Bishop Redding satellite site for Thomas Merton for one of our sites for change. So that's why, Maria, you might not see it in the special education plan.
Thank you. And if I could just ask a quick follow-up. So then does that funding come out of the special education budget, or is that separate? I'm a little bit confused about that.
Do you want some more clarity on it?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if any of those costs come out of the special education budget. That's separate.
Maria, that's an excellent question. So they do not.
You're muted. Sorry.
They don't come into the special education budget. Again, we the support. Well, again, as I'm thinking this through, the support that through social work and CYC, again, would come under the special education umbrella of mental health, supporting those classes. However, we have our mental health supports in all of our schools. Again, this would be just another example where our mental health staff are supporting our students in our schools. So the teachers themselves, no, do not come out of our special education budget. The support staff may come out of a special education budget as we support all of our schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Duarte. Was there any other questions with respect to the trustee report? And I have put a note there in the chat. If anyone is interested in being on the RFP committee representing SEAC, please make sure to send an email to Andrea Hughes, and we can do a random pick from those members to get you on that committee. Okay. So moving on, we have item 9, which is SEAC discussion. So we had allocated some discussion after the presentation. Was there anything else that we wanted to bring up as part of the SEAC discussion? Yep, go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry, this may not be SEAC related, but I can't think of a better group of people to ask. Summer school this summer, is it still on? And is the timeline changed if it is so?
Thank you. Pat, if you're still on the line, I'm not sure. Do you want me to answer this question? I know that we had a discussion about summer school earlier this morning. I'll start. And if you'd like to jump in, please do. We're We're still waiting to hear from the ministry around any specific direction around summer school. They did send out information, some direction. I want to say maybe at the end of last week around summer school and what type of learner they would be supporting. Credit recovery for students to make up some credits or lost time through this distance learning. Around timelines, again, we are in the very, very preliminary stages. Oh, Pat has his hand up. I'll let Pat speak to this because he has probably a little bit more information around this.
Not a whole lot more, Camilla, than what you mentioned, but Ms. Lim, our preliminary planning right now is to establish summer school in an online format. And it's a little bit of a wait and see to see whether or not we can actually offer any sort of face-to-face courses. That'd probably be, well, it will be more dependent on what we're allowed to do once the government starts to open up the province a little bit more. But we'll be going through the process right now of establishing online summer school, which we've done for the last number of years.
Thank you.
Hey,
Dan,
Brenda,
do you want to
this
go
is Dan.
ahead? You have a question?
Yeah, just exactly on the same subject. I was trying to touch on like the special education summer school, because if the conditions are, I guess, approved for in-person schooling by the time of the summer vacation, would it be considered a special education summer school so that they can get a chance to catch up a bit from whatever they lost with the online learning, where not being hands-on, it's a bit more difficult for special needs students to keep up to date with I guess the learning process and the level of achievements that was expected from them.
I'll try. Did you mute yours? Thank you, Dan. So as Mr. Daly indicated, we don't have a lot of specifics at the moment. We are planning for summer school. At the moment, we're planning for a online summer school program. As our director indicated, that our summer schools, even prior to this coming summer, have operated more and more over the last 4 to 5 years. More and more of our classes have been delivered in an online format. So a lot of our summer school teachers and students that have taken them over the years are actually very comfortable with online courses in this version. What you'd mentioned earlier, your question was around the idea that, you know, to provide some, maybe fill some gaps or provide some kind of remedial work for students to make up for this semester where students have had a different experience of school. Again, in the ministry's communication, and thank you, Maria, was yesterday. The ministry did indicate that summer school, the purpose would be to provide students with an opportunity to possibly recover some credits if they would have lost them, possibly make up some courses or to improve in some of their courses. So again, as we get more information from the ministry, it'll help direct our own thinking and planning. From a perspective of just, kind of high level and generally speaking, we are planning for summer school. At the moment, we are planning for a online version of summer school, unless we get further direction between now and that time that we can open up physical summer school. And as we get more direction from the ministry around what kinds of courses should be offered and what type of philosophy to provide around the courses to be offered to students. Because more and more in the past, again, prior to this year, more and more of our students were seeing summer school as an opportunity to reach ahead, to gain a credit that did not already exist for them. So some students would take a credit for the next year in order to free more space on their schedule for the following year. But this might be a unique year where we might need to provide opportunities for students to go back and retake a course that they had taken during regular school year but was disrupted part of this distance learning. I hope I answered the question.
That's right, but the question was specifically for special education. Specifically for special education rather than the regular students and getting credits.
I'm sorry, Dan, I didn't catch the first half of that. Can you repeat that?
So the question was related to special education rather than having different credits ahead of the school year. I know that was happening before, but I think at some point there was a summer school for special education as well. And I think some of the boards do have that. So I was, the question was if that is something that can be maybe reviewed or analyzed to see whether it is an option.
Okay. I do. Yes. Now that you've refreshed my memory, I think we spoke about this at an earlier SEAC for students with more complex needs. Is that
that is correct? Yes. Okay.
So we had not really discussed it or reviewed it, and we probably were going to. Unfortunately, the reality is now that we would have to wait to hear from the ministry whether physical face-to-face summer school would be allowed if school boards would be opened up to have physical summer school, regular summer school, and that question would have to be answered first before we even begin to explore the idea of providing that type of summer school experience again for our students with complex physical needs. I do know that we've offered it in the past. I do remember that, and I wasn't in this role when that stopped being offered, but we can look at that as for sure, but probably not until we hear from the ministry that we're able to have physical summer school in sites.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Maria, do you have a question for me or for I can pass it on to Brenda?
No, it's for you, staff, I think. But I just want to clarify. So, I know you're waiting to hear from the ministry, so I get that. But so it sounds like maybe some of the classes summer school classes that used to be offered physically might be available online if that's permitted and if that's the way that things are going over the summer. And maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that a lot of the more of the summer school classes were normally offered in the classroom with a few online options, but not as many. But maybe that's been changing. And I do think that reach ahead is really important. And I know, particularly in high school, in 4 years, there's so many great courses. Some kids are exploring more than one pathway. They want to take a variety of courses. They have to take the 4 religion classes and all the other required courses. So it is helpful to have that available to them to be able to, explore everything that they would like to. So hopefully we're able to do that. So I just want to confirm that classes that might have been offered physically in the past, there could be an opportunity that maybe they would be offered online. All other things.
I believe so. And Pat's got his hand up. I'll let Pat answer. Hopefully he can have some answers for you. So go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, my understanding is that last year, our summer school offerings, we actually had more students complete credits online than we did face-to-face. So the online option is a growing one. I would anticipate as well that, with students having to potentially complete 2 online credits in order to graduate, that the summer school option would become a more popular option as well. But we'll have to kind of wait and see how that plays out. The other thing with regards to potentially having face-to-face courses this summer, depending on what the government allows, you know, in a period when there's lots of things we can't predict, one of the things we really can't predict is even if the government said we could offer it in some format, what desire there might be amongst parents to send their kids back to school with other kids, you know, prior to September, or quite honestly, the availability of staff to teach some of those programs as well. So that's a little bit of unknown at this point.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up to that? So you mentioned that there was more students that completed online credits last summer, but does that reflect the course offerings? Because, or is that, you know, more students taking those few courses that were available online? I'm just trying to understand how the course offerings kind of play out.
I would say it's probably, and without certainty, I would say it's probably more students taking the courses that were available as opposed to more courses being available. I think you'd be correct there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm muted. You gotta turn yours up. Turn your volume up.
I'm just looking at Jessica. Jessica, did you want to ask that question, or are you okay with the comments?
Is your volume up?
Yeah. So Jessica says, I was concerned about students who filled out option sheets depending on the summer school completion. So even if it's online, it would be great for students to keep their plans.
You're mute. Is your volume on?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. So is there any other items for the SEAC discussion? If not, I will move to information on our next agenda. Good, okay. So our next agenda, as we agreed upon, is going to be May the 11th. We'll start that at 6:30, and we'll send out the details for that to do that via Teams. And please let us know if you don't have access to a copy of the Spec Ed plan, but hopefully everyone has a copy of that electronically. Item 11 is resolution for absentees. So we received regrets from Deborah Barden and Tracy Veals. So if I can get a motion for absenteeism. So Nancy has moved that. Can I get a seconder? Marvin second, thank you. Okay, so we come to our adjournment and our closing prayer. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Nancy, seconded by?
I'll do it again.
Marvin, okay, great. Oh, I've got Maria in there seconding as well. Thank you, and Marika. Okay, so if you can join me in the sign of our faith for our closing prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work, so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Okay, thanks everybody. I think that this actually went reasonably well for our first team meeting. So thank you everybody for bearing with us and for dealing with any of the small technological glitches that we had, but I think it went really well. So thank you again, everybody, for your time. And we will we'll obviously be in touch before the 11th, but we will see you on May the 11th. Thanks, guys.